really excited about this, so I'm just going to get straight in because we're fairly time constrained about this. The first session is going to be chaired by Mary Ann Brocklesby, and will be a question and answer session with Debbie Robinson, who is the CEO of the second largest cooperative society in the UK. Mary Ann is the leader of Monmouthshire County Council and has more than 25 years gender diversity, social development and government experience. This is in consultancy, management training and research on the gender equity, poverty, rights-based and human development aspects. She is a trained coach and mentor working to get more inclusive, gender diverse leaders in development. So we've got an exciting chair and we've got an exciting person who's being interviewed. So I'll hand over to Mary Ann now.
Hello everyone, it's great to have you all online. I feel like you've just been given a CV and I'm ready to start a job interview. Actually, I've spent 35 years supporting cooperatives, and the first cooperative I really worked in was in Indonesia, and I'll be keen to share that in
wow.
I'm more excited at the moment to introduce Debbie Robinson, who, as Pat said, is the Chief Executive of Central England Cooperative Limited, and she's had over 40 years of experience of working across the retail sector. Her life, the little chat I had with beforehand, I can see her life is about making positive change, and all her values are completely, and her ethics are around cooperation, working cooperatively, making a difference. And she was appointed back in April 2019. So talk about starting life at the top of the second biggest co-op, went at the deep end. That was just a few months before we all went into COVID. And yet, as she'll start to tell us, she's made a huge difference in that role. So big that she was awarded an honorary doctorate for her outstanding contribution to business by the University of Birmingham in July 2022. I'm sure that talks to her whole history, but so much of that history is her being part of the cooperative group, working here and internationally. So over to you, Debbie, because I think we all want to hear about your experience, but also your views about women in cooperatives.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And as we all know, never one person that does everything, or indeed does very much at all. And that is the power of cooperation. It is when we genuinely come together with a shared set of values and principles. And my favourites are self-help and and thinking much more about what we can do for our co-op than what our co-op can actually do for us. And that really is always with me. My nana, who I had a brilliant relationship with, was really my first introduction to cooperation. It was the first shop I could ever go to as a little girl. It was the end of my nana's street, Windsor Street in Burnley, and she would give me some money and she would phone them and say, she's coming down. So they'd look out for me. They'd phone her back. It was about 4 doors away, so I'm not talking a big distance here, but it was just that sort of that care, that responsibility that came with being a co-op. And I think today's subject about women in cooperatives is absolutely crucial. Whilst historically we may not appear in many references or photographs or celebrations, I honestly believe that women have been the absolute backbone of the cooperative movement from the very, very beginning. And certainly when Mary Ann and I had a catch up, for me it was what do women bring? I think we bring realism, and I think that's a really understated value. We often have to balance so many aspects of our lives, and we're realistic about our expectations, about capabilities, but we also bring enormous balance to the conversation in doing the best that we can to do the right thing most of the time. But we're all human and we all have our frailties, and I think sometimes we should embrace those and be a little bit more open, that we don't always have the answers, but by actually supporting each other, we'll probably get to a better place than we start out. And as Mary Ann mentioned, I have worked in the cooperative movement for most of my career, primarily a cooperative group, where I worked in milk group, in food distribution, in accounts. And these will be many areas that so many of you will remember. And Wales was a really important part of that, around the dairies, the creameries, the cheese, producing cheese and butters for the whole of the country. So I have really fond and affectionate memories of working in those production facilities. But actually realising fairly early on how to be commercially relevant was really important, because often some of the legacy factories that we had within the cooperative movement were not run efficiently or effectively enough to compete with an ever-changing society. Big milestones for me was the demise of the resale price maintenance that happened originally on food and then more latterly onto medicines and other products. The demise of the Milk Marketing Board that had guaranteed the price of milk wherever you went in the country. But competition is a really good thing, and competition has lowered prices for everybody, and we should be grateful for that. But actually being as efficient as we can be in our cooperatives is absolutely crucial. At the moment, we're focusing on a few key areas. So most of you will know about our Malawi project. Malawi is the 5th poorest country in the world, yet it is a major producer of high protein products, most notably macadamia nuts, as well as many nut products, tea, coffee, rice. And what we're wanting to do there is we've actually created an international cooperative development fund, and we think that's a first. It moves fair trade on. So fair premium to the producers, but it gives that to any producer anywhere in the world, which is a good thing. But our development is about establishing and actually helping people out of poverty through cooperation. And therefore, the International Cooperative Development Fund is doing exactly that. It's organising groups on the ground to help themselves. Already, we've literally planted hundreds of macadamia nuts. We've trained dozens of farmers in the use of organic pesticides to improve their yields, and it is really becoming a virtuous circle. And I'm delighted that there are other cooperatives that have joined that fund, and I would really like to thank Mid-Counties Co-op. I'd like to thank Lincoln. I'd like to thank Radstock and Scott Mid. And a growing number of cooperatives that are joining us on that journey. And I think it's so important when we take things like trade, that really the cooperative movement, and it was people like Brad Hill that actually really did transform what was doing from a fair trade perspective in the UK through his work with cooperatives. But we have to move on, because you can buy fair trade products virtually anywhere in any shop. So now we have to think about, how do we differentiate? How do we help people even more? How do we lift them out of poverty? How do we make them responsible for everything that they do? The other area is around green energy self-sufficiency. So last year, we all know how much our electricity and gas bills went up, but we were also, as co-ops, subscribing to REGOs, which is a certificate that guarantees that there is sufficient energy, green energy in the grid to meet your requirements. And the costs of those went up through the roof. And this is where I'd like to talk about our board and the importance of cooperative boards and how they work together in partnership with executives to move agendas forward. And the biggest area there was actually to say, we're not going to pay the REGOs anymore, but what we are going to do is invest what would have been around £3 million to pay for the certificates in generating green energy. And our board, whilst they had, we had a lot of discussion about the subject or that, and that is absolutely an area that we are going to develop. We don't know how long it's going to take, because we know it's going to cost us an awful lot of money, but we know that we will be protected, and hopefully we'll be able to generate a surplus of green energy to offer to our members and customers in the communities that we serve. So there's a couple of really big things that we are focusing on. But I have to talk about young people as well, importance of attracting young people into our movement, because I absolutely believe that if more of them knew about the cooperative model as an alternative way of raising themselves out of poverty, they would be incredibly attracted to it. So with an amazing team and an especially strong people team led by Sarah Dickens, we've introduced a number of initiatives, debt-free degrees. So we had 11 apprenticeship places in our funeral business, and we have 340 applicants. Normally that is an incredibly difficult area to recruit into. It really is a vocation to work in the funeral sector, to actually be the person that is responsible for our final journey. I don't think there's anything more spectacular than being able to do that. But I do really feel that I've kind of talked at you now for quite a few minutes, so I'm going to ask Mary Ann. That was either a very long introduction, or indeed we've covered quite a lot of ground.